All right. Hello, everyone. I see some attendees coming in. My name is Hannah with Books Inc. And if you're not local to the San Francisco Bay Area, this is a Books Inc. event. And Books Inc. is, as you guessed it, a independent bookstore out in the San Francisco Bay Area. And we are actually the oldest independent in the West. We've been here since 1851. And I always start my events with that little tidbit so that I can then turn around and say thank you to all of you, to the attendees who are coming in, to the panelists here who are here with us tonight. Without your support, we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be the oldest bookstore in the West, and we wouldn't be able to continue with this great event series. So thank you so much to everyone who's here. And I'm going to give you a little bit of a rundown on how this Zoom will work. As you notice, you don't have your video or your mic, and we're going to keep it that way. But if you want to ask our authors and illustrators questions at the end of the event, please enter them at any time during tonight's event in the Q&A box. And either myself or Rachel, who's in the background, will pop up and ask the questions on your behalf. If you want to interact with yourselves or with Rachel and I with Books Inc., you can do so in the chat. Otherwise, we're going to have a fun, great event for you. And yeah, let's make sure you have all your drawing utensils. We're going to have some fun activities. So make sure you run and get those while I introduce our wonderful authors. It is my extreme pleasure to introduce the best-selling and beloved duo behind the wildly popular Ivy and Bean series. Author Annie Barrows and illustrator Sophie Blackall. Tonight, we are celebrating the release of Ivy and Bean Get to Work, another laugh-out-loud adventure featuring your favorite curious and mischievous besties. Sophie, Annie, welcome and thank you, and I'll pass it on to you.
All right, thank you so much, Anna.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. It's I wish we could see you. I'm imagining how gorgeous you all are, and wherever you are. I'm in New York, where it's practically night. It's practically bedtime. Let's face it. But I'm wide awake because I'm so excited to be here. I'm Sophie, by the way.
And I am Annie. And Sophie is the person who draws the beautiful pictures in Ivy and Bean. I am the person who writes the words in Ivy and Bean. And you know, I am in the same time zone you guys are. In fact, I'm just sitting right here in California, like I bet a lot of you are. So it's not even anywhere near bedtime. But if Sophie falls asleep, because it is nearly bedtime for her, I will scream and yell until she wakes up. So don't give it another thought. We're going to take care of all the problems here in Ivy and Bean land. Yes. So now, people, we are all here because this book was born today. Ivy and Bean Get to Work, and it has a little top hat in this one I'm holding up. So what I want to do, though, before I start talking about this book, is I know that a lot of you are here because you adore Ivy and Bean. You're big Ivy and Bean readers, and you're super knowledgeable. But there just might be somebody here who is not 100% up on the Ivy and Bean facts. So I'm just going to do a super quick run through just of a few important details. Okay, super important. This person here, that's Ivy. This person over here, that's Bean. Another super important thing is that before they knew each other, they didn't like each other because, as you can see, Ivy's the kind of kid who likes big books. And Bean's the kind of kid who likes to run around and yell and scream and fall out of trees. So before they knew each other, Bean thought that it was possible that Ivy was the most boring human being on the face of the planet, except that all changed. That all changed in one day when Bean, well, she was having some troubles with her older sister, Nancy, so she decided to run away from home. And she was running around her cul-de-sac when she found herself in front of Ivy's house. She and Ivy started talking, and that's when Bean discovered that Ivy was practicing to be a witch when she grew up, which was far more interesting than Bean had ever dreamed that Ivy could be. So together, Ivy and Bean decided that the real solution to Bean's problems with her older sister, Nancy, would be to cast a spell on Nancy. Now, the spell was supposed to make Nancy dance uncontrollably for the rest of her life. And if you've read the book, you know that doesn't exactly turn out right. But worms, mud, and Nancy totally freaked out. So it was a great day. And after that great day, Ivy and Bean have always been the best of friends. They have been the best of friends through 11 more books. There they all are, those beautiful books. And, you know, they've had a million fabulous adventures together. Like, for instance, they have expelled a ghost from the girls' bathroom at their school. They have dug up the bones of mystery and possibly broken a world's record. They got stuck in the attic. They were very, very close to being so good that animals would follow them around for the rest of their lives. They learned a little bit about ballet and a whole lot about squids. They solved the problem of climate change. They started a newspaper called The Flipping Pancake and were rewarded by wax. They founded Camp Flaming Arrow and redefined the friendship bracelet. They cracked the case of the yellow rope. They were almost conjoined twins. And now, in the 12th and final book, I'm not going to tell you what happens because I'm going to read to you a bit from this book, because that's what I do. I'm an author. Now, when you're an author and you're reading from a new book, you are supposed to read from chapter 1. But heck, I'm the author. I can do whatever I want. So I'm going to start on chapter 2. So there. All you need to know is that there is a career fair at Ivy and Bean's school. And of course, they're going. This chapter is entitled Yoga, Tooth Decay, and Hairy Pipes. When Ms. Aruba Tate's class arrived at the school career fair, a PTA dad handed each student a pencil and a piece of paper. At the top were the words, "When I grow up, I want to be." The dad explained that they were supposed to list 3 jobs they had learned about at the career fair that they wanted to have when they were grown up. He hurried them inside. The long lunch tables that were usually in the cafeteria were gone. Instead, there were rows of small tables. At each one, there was a grown-up. On every table, there was a sign saying the grown-up's name and job. "Wander around, kids," urged the dad. "Ask questions. Find out what these people do all day. Discover your passion." Okay. Ivy and Bean stopped at the first table. On it sat a tall woman. Her sign said Sheila Yoga Instructor. She stared at them. They stared at her. "Take a brochure," she said eventually. They took a brochure. There she is. Chet Banker was next. He had a stack of play money in front of him. "Where does money come from? Answer me that," he said. "The ATM?" guessed Bean. Chet Banker said, "Sure, but why do we have money?" Ivy and Bean looked at each other. That was something they had always wondered. Chet Banker slid a play dollar toward each of them. "Let's say you have $1, he said. "You can keep your dollar safe at home and you will have $1. You can spend your dollar and then you'll have nothing. Or you can put your dollar in the bank and let the bank use it to say thanks. The bank will give you a little bit more money. And so in the end, you will have more than $1. You will be richer. Isn't that great?" Ivy and Bean looked down at their play dollars. "How come we can't buy things with this paper and we can buy things with paper money?" asked Bean. "Who decided it?" asked Ivy. "I don't know," admitted Chet Banker. I really just don't know. Augustine Dentist's table had posters of tooth decay and baskets of floss. If he wants more business, he should give away candy, said Ivy as they hurried by. Oh, wait, said Bean, looking ahead. There's an author. Ivy liked books. They went to look at Piggy Author. On her table was a big stack of books, but they were all the same book. They were about avocados. Narvin Plummer had pictures of horrible things he'd found in pipes, like hairballs. He even had a sample pipe with hair sticking out the end of it. Don't brush your hair over the sink, okay? He said. Ivy looked guilty. Bean told Narvin she didn't brush her hair at all. It still falls off your head, he said. All the time, it's falling and falling. He looked upset thinking about it, so Bean wrote plumber at the top of her page to make him feel better. But she didn't really want to be a plumber. As they were walking away from Narvin Plummer, they saw their friend, most of the time, Leo. He was walking very fast, pulling another kid by the sleeve. Come on, he was saying. Hurry up. What's happening? Called Bean. Where are you going? Leo turned around. His eyes were shining. I found the best job ever. It's in the back. Come on. Chapter 3, the best job in the world. Leo was almost running, and Bean and Ivy had to move fast to keep up with him. They scurried past a whole row of careers to arrive at the farthest end of the cafeteria. There were only 2 tables in this row, and one of them was empty. At the other was surrounded by kids. Behind it sat a big old man in a plaid shirt. Herman Treasure Hunter, his sign said. Wow, said Bean, looking at Herman Treasure Hunter's table. On it were lots of coins and jewelry speckled with dirt. This is a job? Yep, said Herman. Best job in the world. He's my grandpa, said the girl next to him. A 5th grade girl standing next to him. Her name was Elsa. She had a very long braid. He takes me treasure hunting on weekends, don't you, Grandpa? Yep, said Herman. And all that money, asked Leo, looking at the coins. You just found it? Yep, said Herman. Grandpa's rich. Elsa flopped her braid. How do you know where to look? Asked a 3rd grader named Sienna Kate, crowding in next to Ivy. Well, began Herman. You go to places where people lose things, interrupted Elsa. You go to parks and beaches and parking lots and places like that because people lose things all the time in those places. They lose keys and watches and jewelry, even rings. We found this last weekend. She held up a ring with a face on it. And I got this one, said Herman. He pointed to a little metal race car. Antique, worth a bundle. Found it up at the lake. But how? Asked Leo. Do you just go and dig around? Elsa laughed. No, we use this. She pointed to a metal stick next to her grandpa. It's a metal detector, she explained, holding it up so they could see. You hold it over the ground like this and you swing it. And when it finds metal, like gold, it beeps, and then you dig. All the kids crowded around Herman's table moaned. What? Asked Herman. What's wrong? How much does a metal detector cost? Asked Leo. $162, said Elsa, but it detects in water. Everyone moaned again. Leo shook his head. I knew it was too good to be true. We're kids. We don't have $162, Eric yelled. That's almost 2 years of allowance, groaned Margalie. Herman frowned. Now, hang on just a minute there. He leaned down and rummaged underneath his table and brought up a big book. The book was called Finders Keepers. On the cover was a picture of a hand with a stack of gold coins on it. Herman pointed to the picture. The fella in this picture, he didn't use any metal detector. No, sir. He was digging out the basement and his shovel struck metal. Clunk. Herman's eyes got big. When he pulled up his shovel, there was a gold coin sitting right on the end. So he keeps on digging, and guess what? He looked at Leo. He found more, asked Leo. He found a hoard, said Herman. That means a whole lot, said Elsa. A ton. The old time treasure hunters didn't have metal detectors, said Herman. They had shovels and they had intuition. That's all you need. What's intuition? Asked Zuzu. A hunch, whispered Ivy. A hunch, called Bean. Right. You feel it sometimes, said Herman, looking into space in a mysterious way. Yeah, said Elsa. Real treasure hunters have a special sense. Wow, thought Bean. A special sense. Ivy nodded. A special sense. People have been finding treasure for hundreds of years, said Herman. They didn't use metal detectors. They used their heads. They thought, where do people bury things? Where do people lose things? And then they'd go to that spot and they'd dig. Metal detectors make it easier, sure they do. But the most important thing, intuition. And a shovel, said Elsa. No one answered. They were all busy writing treasure hunter on their when I grow up, I want to be papers. Now, I am not going to tell you what happens next. Do they find treasure? That would be pretty great, right? Because treasure is really, really fun to find, but you're going to have to read the book to find out whether Ivy and Bean find treasure. Sophie and I would like to talk to you about treasure now because we like finding treasure as much as the next guy. So we have been asking a lot of people, what's the best thing you ever found? Sophie, what's the best thing you ever found?
You can see the shelves in my workroom are just full of things that I found, groaning with things. One of the best things that I ever found was this. I don't know if you can see this. It is solid wood, and it says on it, Souvenir Main Dam.
Ooh,
and it's kind of, I think it's kind of a dam shaped souvenir from a dam. The thing is, I didn't find it near a dam. I found it on a street in the city on the ground. But it's, I mean, it's not any dam, it's the main dam. And it's a souvenir. And the souvenirs are fantastic things because they're nothing, right? They're just the thing that reminds you of another thing. So I'm mad about souvenirs. But also I was reminded, Annie asked what one of the boxes was on my shelf, and then it led me to another box. This is a box full of lots of things that I found. If you're a little bit squeamish, you might want to close your eyes because it's a little bit spooky. All right, I'm going to give you a second. It is full of bird skulls that I found on the beach and in the woods. And they were all once flying birds, and now they live in this box. Well, what about you, Annie? What's the best thing you've ever found?
Well, I found a lot of things, but because I spend a lot of time sort of with my eyes down on the ground looking for stuff. Yeah. I want to find things, but I gotta say, she's really a pretty good thing. I found this head in a park, and if you lie her down like this, she kind of looks jolly. But if you lie her down like this, she looks really sad. So if you sort of depends on your mood how I put her. I really like her, and she's obviously looking at the sky. She's star watching. I like that part too. But yeah, she's really pretty much the best thing I have. Yeah, come on.
That is really good. That is really good.
Yeah.
We, as Annie said, we've asked all of you, in fact, and some of you have actually responded, what the best thing was that you ever found. And so I'm going to show you some of them. We're going to jump into share screen like this. It's going to be seamless. Here we go. So let's see. We've got, Miriam, who is 6.5, who lives in San Antonio in Texas, found this Halley's Comet pin from 1985. And she said, this was from before I was born, which is when I was a teenager. So that makes me feel very old. But that's a pretty cool thing to find. Like comets are excellent anyway. To find a little tiny badge with a comet is really cool. What else do we have? We have, oh, Renee found this at a ritzy golf course. It's a ritzy thing. Don't you think that's a ritzy thing? That looks like treasure.
And it's got tridents, which are those pitchforks with 3 prongs. And I think that's it's like a dragon or something in the middle, isn't it?
Seahorse kind of dragony thing. A sea dragon.
Yeah,
that's a very good. That's absolutely treasure.
Sabina, who is in kindergarten and lives in Oakland, California, found 7 pieces of treasure at the beach when she was on vacation. Sabina, you are after my heart. I cannot go to a beach without bringing lots of it home. Sometimes you're not meant to, but I think little shells know what's going on.
It won't even notice.
Still on the shell theme, Jane, who is 8 and lives in California, found this perfect Scotch bonnet. I did not know. I thought a Scotch bonnet, first of all, I thought a Scotch bonnet was a hat that people wore in Scotland. And then I remembered that there's a kind of chili pepper, which is really, really hot, a Scotch bonnet. It's a little yellow one and it takes the top of your head off. Yes. But I didn't know there was a shell called a Scotch bonnet. Did you?
I thought it was all the pepper. I mean, the pepper, I'm scared of the pepper because one time I had it inadvertently and it was terrible, but this is
did
beautiful.
The top of your head come off?
Yeah, this is, exactly. The top of my head came off and I need that. But I had no idea it was such a pretty shell, nor that it's the state shell of South Carolina, for heaven's sakes. Who knew?
I did not know. Roosevelt, which is a fantastic name, Rosie, found this green marble, which I also love finding marbles, and green ones are especially exciting. I think that might be a cat's eye. Do you know marbles all have different names? We can't go off on too much of a tangent, but there are marbles called onion skins, and there are marbles called cloud of dreams.
Really?
Pretty good marble name. Yeah. This Marlo found this rock, which I just love because it clearly has stripes on it. And she does point out that it's actually small. So it might be smaller than we see on the screen. Marlo 7 from Burbank, California. So this is not something somebody found. This is treasure that somebody made.
Specifically me, because, there's finding treasure, which is great. But another thing you can do, which is almost as much fun as finding treasure, is you make treasure for kids of the future. And here's my treasure box. You are seeing a picture of the inside of my treasure box. And now you can put anything in your treasure box. In my treasure box happens to have, a tiny eraser shaped like a cookie. And it happens to have a tiny rolling pin. And it happens to have a cloth mouse. But your treasure box can have anything in it. The important point is you don't want it to be too big because, as you'll see, you got to find a good hiding place for your treasure. So what you do when you make a treasure box is you make a treasure box, and then you have it, and then you get the fun of hiding your treasure box for kids of the future. It's a lovely thing to do because think how excited you would be if somebody in the past had hid a treasure box for kids of the future and that kid was you. So what we're going to do now is talk about hiding treasure boxes and even better, making a map to find a treasure so the kids of the future can find your treasure.
Right. So some of you may know all about treasures and treasure maps. I'm going to show you first what I did with my treasure, which I can't tell you what was in there because it was secret. That was my treasure box, and I went to hide it. And look where I am. I'm counting out my steps. All right, I go over the swing. I go over the broken bridge of no return, past the sea of, I can't remember what the sea is called, desolation.
I think it's desolation. Oh,
Under the magic arbor. And then I'm hiding my treasure in what used to be a foxhole. It's a really cool hole under there that the kids who grew up, my kids are kind of growing up now, but we were always fascinated with this foxhole. And I think children of the future will also be fascinated. So this is where I hid my secret treasure box. And now I'm going to show you how I made a map to show children of the future, if they're really smart, curious, where they might find this hidden box under the foxhole. So a little bit of background on treasure maps. I love maps in general. I think all the best people in the world love maps, so I hope that you love maps too. This is a map of Iceland, which is kind of a magical place to begin with, but it has a lot of the best things on a map, which especially are sea monsters. Even if you're drawing a map inland and there's no sea, it's good to put a few sea monsters on there. I think they're essential, because you want to make the children of the future know that it's not just easy finding treasure, right? You just don't go and just like pluck the treasure out where the X marks the spot. There's got to be some peril, some danger, some adventure when you get the treasure. So sea monsters are key. All right, so another thing that's important on your treasure map is points of direction. And all of the old maps had something called a compass rose. And the compass rose is that decorative thing down there in the corner that shows the points north, south, east, and west, so you know which direction you're facing. So this might be a moment, if you have a pencil with you and a piece of paper, and if you want to know how to draw a compass rose to put on your map. I'm going to give you a second to find your piece of paper and your pencil. And then I'm going to show you how to draw a compass rose. So you can see that it has NESW, which stands for north, east, south, and west. And north is always the important one. I don't know why, but you never say, west, east, south, north. You always start at north, east, south, west. Actually, a lot of people say north, south, east, west, because north and south are the poles, the North Pole and the South Pole. And so then this, yes.
My question is, if you don't know which way is north, can you just sort of make it up?
I think you could probably just make it up, or if it's a cloudy day, you might need to make it up, or you can find where the sun is. And the sun, depending on where you live in the world and where the sun rises and sets, you can figure out where east and west are, and then you can figure out north. You might have a sundial. That's another way to find out north. You might have a compass. That's a very good way, or you might even have a phone. Most phones have compasses on them now. All right, so here we go. This is how you draw a compass rose. You start with a circle, and then you put 2 crossed lines, and then 2 more lines like that, like the spokes of a wheel, a square. You connect all those points. It's super quick. You've got this right down. And then around the edge of your letters, you color it in, draw your wavy lines, and you can make it as elaborate or decorative as you like. In fact, the book's ink sunbursts down there that you might be able to see on your screen are a little bit like a compass rose. Do you want to see that again? Are you kind of all weeping now that went so quickly?
Yeah, I need it.
I'm going to show you again. All right, here we go. Your circle, you got your cross, you've got cross, the square in the middle, then you join up all those points, and then some more points, and then you color them in. And the tricky part about coloring them in is you choose one side of that point that you're going to make black. And then you go, I chose the right side. So I went around all the points and made just the right side of each long pointy bit black. So it kind of looks like a shadow. It gives it a little bit like a folded origami or something. All right, so that's the compass rose. So then I made the whole map, and I made it look old, like a pirate map. And that was the most fun part of all of it. And I'm going to show you how to do that in a minute. So do you remember when I left the house, there was that horse head on the door, and there was my pink house, and I went over the swing and everything. So this is, first of all, I drew all those steps. And so this is how I did it. On a piece of paper, I drew my house, and the horse head, that's the dotted line, is like cutting off the horse's head. It's a little bit gruesome. There's the fire pit, the tree, the swing, the bridge, the sea with the foul beasts, and there's the tree with the hole. There's my compass rose and all the points. And it's good to name all your spots, and give them good names. You can just totally make up the names. That's a fun part. There's quicksand up there. So then I'm going to stop sharing now so that I can come out and show you the actual piece of paper with the map. Okay, where are we? Here we are. So here is my map. Now, I printed a few of these so that I could show you the step-by-steps, but the first thing you're going to do is tear the edges off. So you have a raggedy, and you try not to tear your drawing, but a raggedy edge on all 4 sides. So it looks like an old piece of parchment paper. So here's one. This is like a cooking show. Here's one I prepared earlier that has all of its edges already torn. And now comes the fun part. One of the ways you can make it look old, and some of you might have done this already, is to dip it in. I can't show you this, but I have a whole table set up of, it's like a mad scientist's lab. I'm going to dip my piece of paper in coffee. Here's the coffee pot that I poured onto a big tray, and I'm dipping my piece of paper in coffee. Oh, it's very drippy. And what's super fun, I'm going to show it to you in a second. It's very, very drippy. All right, catching the drips. Here it is, all dripping with coffee. What's fun now is I'm going to crumple it up. Just squish it up like this in a ball. It's a drippy ball of my drawing on paper. And then I'm going to open it up now again. And then if you want to, if you're impatient like I am, you can get your hair dryer and you can dry it. I won't do this now because it's really loud, but that's what I would do to dry it. Or you can just drape it over something and let it dry. And it's going to dry with all of the creases, and it's going to look really old. And then for extra fun, you can get a bowl of dirt, because everything's better with dirt, and you can rub some dirt in there, and then you can shake off all the dirt. Oh, I'm making such a mess here. And then scrunch it up a little bit more and then let it dry. And then when it's all dry, then you can paint it if you want to, or use markers to color in the bits. So here's my map that I made.
Oh, that's good.
And the reason why I would suggest doing the color after is that if you did it before, the coffee would make all of the marker or the paint and everything smudge. So you can do that afterwards. So then, and fold it up a bunch as well. Fold it and refold it, squish it until it's sort of, and then you have it when it's really tiny. And then you have your oldie worldy ancient pirate treasure map. And then there's another step, right, Annie? What do you do with the treasure map?
Well, then the very important factor is you have to hide the treasure map someplace where the kids of the future will find it. Now, if you live in most places that people live, have some really good spots, like if a house or an apartment, you have some really good spots to hide a map where a grown-up, for instance, would never look, and a kid would look, and the place that you hide it is not ever going to change. So it's not like something where once you move out of the house and the kid of the future moves in, it's not something that will ever change. For instance, do you want to show the pictures of these?
Sure. Yes. These are the best pictures you are ever going to see.
Yeah, they're so beautiful.
They're so good. All right.
Yeah.
So here we are at our map.
The map is pretty.
Right.
Under the bathtub, people. If you can get to the underneath of your bathtub, that thing is not going to change. You can move out of the house, 25 people can move in, but if you put something underneath your bathtub, if you can reach it, that thing will be there forever. And some kid of the future will go crawling around looking at the stuff under other stuff, and it will be found, and it will be a mystery.
Yeah, mystery. Another good spot is if you have an older house like I do, there might be some gaps in the floorboards. We have big gaps. I've filled some of them with pebbles, and some of them are too big even for pebbles, but would be perfect for a treasure map.
And I don't have old floorboards, but I have linoleum that if you are feeling kind of enterprising, you can pull it up with your fingernails and just slip something underneath it. It's super easy. I have slipped stuff underneath my linoleum. I'm hoping kids of the future will find it.
And then if you don't want to, you know, mess with old things, or there are plenty of places in a brand new place as well, just where no one ever looks, especially grown-ups, you know, up high on the top of a window ledge, or underneath in a built-in cupboard, like under a shelf. You can tape it underneath something. Or you have another good idea, Annie.
On the bottom of the kitchen sink. Now, often you can get underneath your kitchen sink and people put their, I don't know, sponges and stuff under the kitchen sink. But the bottom of the sink is under there too. Nobody ever messes with the bottom of the sink. It's perfectly dry. You can tape a map to the bottom of your kitchen sink.
Ours was actually leaking today, but you know, most
things. On some rare occasions.
And then another place that's sink related and similar, of course, is the back of a toilet.
Yes, your toilet tank. Look, there is always a, well, I can't say always, I've seen it otherwise, but most of the time there's a space between the top of the toilet tank and the wall. You just tape that map right to the back of the toilet tank. No grown-up ever messes with the back of a toilet tank. But kids, they poke around in the toilet all the time. You know, look in the top. What is under that lid? They're going to look around. They're going to see stuff.
And if you're worried about, you know, if you have spent hours and days and weeks making your treasure map and you're a little worried about condensation, and you know, I would be if I were you, you can always put it in a Ziploc bag and then a bit of duct tape. Ivy and Bean's tool of choice.
Yes.
Duct tape is good for everything.
All problems.
So I think this concludes the educational element of this evening's. We've you know, we've imparted the best things that we know how to do: hide things behind toilets and make treasure maps. But you know, we haven't really talked about the fact, and I'm glad that we're staying on this slide, but we haven't really talked about the fact that that this is the 12th and last book in the Ivy and Bean series. And for me and for Annie, that means we've been making these books for a long time. And you might say, oh, that's 12 months. But it took us longer than a month to make each book. In fact, it took us longer than a year to make each book. It was because I was a little bit slow sometimes. It was mostly my fault. But 17 years, right, Annie?
That's right. Yes, 17.
And in that time, when we started, our kids were Ivy and Bean's age, and now they're grown-ups. They're grown-ups. They're taller than us, exactly. Which one day you will all probably be as well. It's shocking. But so it's a little bit bittersweet. You know, it's that bittersweet thing, which means it's, you know, it's happy, and it's also a little bit sad that we've come to the end of Ivy and Bean. But I think Annie and I talk about this a lot because we love books, and when we're chatting, we often chat about books that we love, and reading other books, and we suggest books to each other. And one of the nicest things, two of the nicest things I think about reading, one is reading your favorite book again. It's like going back to an old friend, and especially if you haven't read it for a little while, and it reminds you of the things that you were doing when you read it last time. Reading a book again, an old friend, is a lovely thing to do. And then also you can pass a favorite book to somebody else, right? You can pass it down to your siblings, to your friends.
Yeah, and in a way, it is sort of like a treasure, because it's something I feel like in a way, the stories that Sophie and I are leaving behind are like, we're leaving them for kids of the future, the same way that you would leave treasure for kids of the future. And when you pass a book to a friend that you really enjoyed, you're giving them a treasure. So it's sort of special and appropriate that this final book in the Ivy and Bean series is about treasure. But it, as Sophie says, it's sort of sad for us to be leaving Ivy and Bean after all these years. We've loved them so much, and we've really loved, gotta admit it. I mean, it's great to write a book all alone in your room. It's great to draw pictures all alone in your room, but the really fun part has been coming out and meeting kids back in the pre-pandemic world when we actually met human children. I know you're out there, but that's been a wonderful part, and we're really going to miss that part. So whenever we get sad, we think about how kids are going to pass these books along to their friends and how new kids might read them that don't know about them yet. And they will be sort of like friends of ours because they're reading these books that we worked on. And we hope that you guys will feel the same when you read Ivy and Bean Get to Work, and that you won't be sad at all. You'll think, oh, this is a great book. I'm going to give it to my pal here. But you know what? If you are really sad, we do have one more idea. Sophie, do you want to talk about it?
One more idea. Well, if you go to this website, which you can see on here now, it's Chronicle Books. I can't see it now. What is it? Can you read it out loud? It's gone for me.
It's www.chroniclebooks.com/collections/Ivy-Bean.
There you go. So you might want to write that down. But if you go there, and I think Books Inc. have it on their webpage as well, you will find one more thing that is an Ivy and Bean quiz. And as Annie said in the very beginning, when we started talking to you a little while ago, before all the treasure map and all the excitement that we've had behind the toilet cistern and everything, Annie said, some of you out there know more about Ivy and Bean than we do. And I have a terrible memory now. I can't remember anything, but I know a lot of you remember everything about Ivy and Bean. And so for those of you who are just, I finished the last book, I don't know what I'm going to do with myself, this is your chance to show how much you know about Ivy and Bean with the best, most wonderful, not necessarily the last Ivy and Bean quiz with a prize. Do you want to tell them the first question, Annie?
Okay.
Quiz, just a little sample.
I just want to say that this is a really, really hard quiz. I mean, I went all out. I did research. I had to look in every book. I read every single book again. This is one tough quiz. Okay. I'm going to read you the first question. Oh, by the way, the questions are not in book order. This could be from any book. Also, another thing, we aren't giving you any answer options. You just have to think of it. Here's question number 1. The longest blank in the world is 19 feet long. No hints here. You're on your own, people. But here's the deal. Here's the good deal. If you can answer all of these questions, and there's only one answer to each one. If you can answer all of these questions, you take the first letter of each answer and you arrange it in the order of the questions, and you will get a secret, what do you want to call it? A secret code, which you can use to claim the prize. And guess what the prize is? This is what we meant when we said, if you're really sad, you can do this. The prize is an unpublished Ivy and Bean story. It's never going to be published, that you may finish for yourself if you want. It's unfinished. It's a few chapters of an Ivy and Bean story, but you can finish it if you want, or you could just read it. You don't have to do any work at all. You can just read it. And so there'll be a little bit more Ivy and Bean if you can figure out the answers to these quizzes, to the answers to the quiz, which I could never do in a million years if I hadn't.
And luckily for me, I know the author, and so I got some of the answers that I couldn't figure out, and I got the password, and I cheated basically. But I support cheating in this kind of case, especially if it helps me get to the story, which is what I wanted to do, because a never before published Ivy and Bean story that I could read. I wanted to get there, and I did, and I read it, and it's really funny. So I encourage you to go through your old Ivy and Beans and find those clues. You could do it in a team. You could get some help. That's not cheating.
That kind of cheating is totally a-okay.
It's totally fine. And then one more thing. If you have treasure that you found that you would like to share with us, we love other people's treasure as much as we enjoy finding our own treasure. So you can email it to us at ivyandbeantreasure@gmail.com. And we have an Instagram page, which is @ivyandbeantreasure, and we're putting pictures up there of the treasure that people have found. So with that, I'm wondering whether anybody has any questions for us. I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to jump out of here and come back to just us.
Yes, so we do have some questions. First off, thank you. Second, I'm having my own tech issues. So I'm going to ask you questions with my video off because to me it's very lagged, but you guys are all good. So I'm going to turn my video off, but I'm the one asking the questions.
Okay.
But I want to say thank you. And that BooksInc sent all those links with the Eventbrite Zoom information. So you should all have them in your email box already. If you lose it after the end of today's event, I'll also send a follow-up email later. But I also wanted to say, because the ending of your conversation was so wonderful, about like how books are treasures and the joy of passing them on. And BooksInc will definitely be helping people find Ivy and Bean for years to come. So thank you. And we do have a couple people asking in the Q&A if there's a specific reason why this might be the last, or this is the last Ivy and Bean book.
Well, there's a couple of reasons. I mean, for 12 books is a lot, right? That's a lot of books, number one.
It is.
Two, it's really, really heavy to carry around 12 books. And I feel like if you can't lift them, you shouldn't write anymore. Okay, number three. I remember how Sophie said that we can't remember anything, we're so old. I was typing the last Ivy and Bean book, type it. And usually I am laughing because I think I'm so funny. Well, this time I was typing and I'd go, oh, and then I think, oh no. Did I write that before? And I would have to go in all the old Ivy and Bean books to see whether I had written it before. And that to me is a sign that I have written a lot of Ivy and Bean books and maybe it's time to stop. And so they've had some great adventures. They've had a lot of great adventures, 12 great adventures. So that's what really, those three things really made me feel like, okay, at 12, it's a good number.
12's a really good number. And I had a similar thing with trying to come up with new t-shirts for Bean to wear. She has all these different things on her t-shirts. And there's a book that some of you might have, which is called Ivy and Bean and Me, where you can fill in things. This is another kind of book for kids who know a lot about Ivy and Bean. And there are some blank t-shirts in there where you can come up with your own designs. And if I was smart about it, I should have asked you all to send me those, and then I could have kept drawing Ivy and Bean forever. But you can draw your own Ivy and Bean, and I have loved it when kids have sent me pictures of their own drawings of Ivy and Bean.
Oh yeah, that's another point. Thank you, Sophie, for reminding me. You guys can write Ivy and Bean stories. You go. Ivy and Bean belongs to all of you. If you love Ivy and Bean, they love you, and you can write your own Ivy and Bean stories. Make yourselves laugh. Have a blast.
We had a quick question about that book in particular. Is it a sticker book? Are there stickers in that book?
There are no stickers, but I'll show you. There's lots of room to fill in blanks, and then you can draw pictures. And there are pictures in it, but there are places for you to draw pictures, and then there's a few rules of how to behave if you happen to meet the queen, and then there's a few story starters about like that much writing, and then you can write the rest of the story yourself. So there's plenty of practice here for people who want to write their own Ivy and Bean stuff. It's a good way to practice writing this book.
Yeah, Ivy and Bean and Me. Someone asked what the title was,
yes,
so
that's
just
correct.
repeating that one. Perfect, great. So we have let's see, a few more questions here, and people are adding them as we go. So we'll see where I started. I know you were just talking about how sometimes it's hard for you to remember what you've already written, but someone has a question here about the very first Ivy and Bean book. And how you came up with the idea. So do you remember all those years ago?
I remember.
Okay.
That I remember. Okay.
And that's from Rosie. Rosie is asking that.
What happened was I had a little daughter who was 7 years old, and that kid had learned how to read. She could read, but she couldn't read really big, long books. So we started Magic Tree House like everybody else. And then, we read Judy B. Jones. But back then, all those years ago, there was not that much after, you finished a certain number of series and it was great, but then she'd finished them and she wanted to read more. And I looked around the library and I couldn't find anything for her. And I felt really bad about that. My feeling was, okay, you run out of stuff to read when you're 40. That makes sense. You run out of stuff to read when you're 7. That's just downright discouraging. So I thought maybe I would try to write a book for her. And I wanted to write a book that she would enjoy. So I wrote it, kind of a book about the stuff she was doing with her friends at the time, which was primarily making potions. They're all over the house still after all this time. And then when I finished it, like I said, I type and I laugh. I think I'm hilarious. I thought this thing is really good. I'm going to send it to a publisher. So that's how it happened. It all came about because my daughter ran out of stuff to read. That was the original idea.
Very cute. Let's see. Colleen would like to know from both of you, which book in the series is your personal favorite and why? That's a hard one.
Sophie?
It is a hard one, but I have, and now I don't have it right. Well, the one I actually have right next to me, I was going to say book 9, which is Ivy and Bean Make the Rules. I just love Camp Flaming Arrow. It was so much fun to draw. Yeah. I love their friendship bracelets, which is just a total tangle. I'm actually going to show you something really quickly. I happen to have here the Ivy and Bean Traveling Museum, where when Annie and I were able to go out in the real world and see you all, we would sometimes take the Ivy and Bean Traveling Museum with us. It's seen some better days. But look, what opens immediately. So it's got many cabinets inside. It's a cabinet of wonders. But this one actually is number 13, and here's Ivy and Bean's friendship bracelet. That's pretty much how it turned out.
Yeah, that's how it turned out.
Which just still makes me laugh so much because that would be my friendship bracelet.
Yeah, that's what happens when I try to do one too. Yeah.
But then the one that was next to me, see, I'm just going to blab now because get me talking about Ivy and Bean and I can't stop, is the one that I have right next to me, which is book 8, No News is Good News. Partly because this, during the pandemic, the pandemic that was, I'd like to say it was, Annie and I spent a lot of time with children in Maine, and it was like an online book club with book 8. And which some of you may remember who have read it, is about cheese and the wax on the outside of a special kind of special just for you single serving size Belle de Lune low fat cheese. And we had so much fun with these kids with the wax and making their own newspaper. And so this one now has a whole new kind of life. What about you, Annie? What's your favorite?
I was going through all the books to write the hardest trivia quiz ever. And I have to say, I wind up in the same I sound like a grown-up and this brings me much shame, but I love them all. I love them all. And there are different things about them that I love, but they're my darling angel babies. And I just think they're just the cutest things in the world. Even doing this, I also was unable to pick my favorite picture because I love the pictures so much too. But there was one picture that I go to. I look at this picture again and again, and I think, how did Sophie do this? Like, what line is it that achieves this thing that I'm seeing here? I love that picture. I love Bean's expression. That is, to me, I don't know how you did it, Sophie. I think it's amazing, but I love that picture of them, of Bean feeling like proud instead of wanting to run away from home, which is what she thought a few moments before. She feels proud and happy, and she loves Ivy, and I love it. I love that picture so much.
If I might take this moment to say that as we look back through all the books, not only do we, I think, I'm speaking for you, Annie, but jump in and correct me if it's wrong. Not only do we see, where we were the last 17 years when we were making each of these books, and our kids who are now 24, the ones who were 7, but also that the other people who helped us make these books, and our beloved editor Victoria Rock, and our beloved designer Sarah Gillingham,
who have been on this journey with us from the very beginning. And Sarah sent us a message today that I might just read to you. It's one line long, but it summed it up for me. It's kind of everything that, you know, that I would hope for in life. She said that I hope this book and even tonight's event is the confetti icing on the most beautiful stacked high rainbow layer cake of dreams.
Oh,
And that is pretty, the confetti icing on the most beautiful stacked high rainbow layer cake of dreams is, you know, that's pretty much
that's pretty much it.
For everything.
That's what I would call this. Look at those beautiful.
Oh, yeah. That's what it looks like.
It's a layer cake. Yeah.
That's beautiful.
A very big thank you to our Chronicle team
Yes.
and
For both of us,
everybody else who works so hard behind the scenes.
Yes, thank you. There is a question that came in through Marlo. She asks, or they asked, did you meet and then come up with the idea of to make Ivy and Bean, or not? Or something else? That was my ad. Sorry, I didn't ask that question correctly. Did you meet before you wrote the books, or not?
No.
Okay.
I wrote the first book just words, and for about a year it was just words. Well, Chronicle Books, that the group, that publishing company that Sophie just mentioned, went on a worldwide treasure hunt for Sophie. It took a while to find her, but when we found her, we knew that she was the perfect person to make my words something special. So then we didn't work together. In fact, they didn't want us to ever talk to each other. They were afraid we would be bad, which we are. So we didn't talk to each other for the first, how many years? 3 years, 4 years?
It was 3. I think it was the first 3. They kept apart.
Kept us
Like at
apart.
school when you're not allowed to sit next to your friend.
Yeah, they separated us because they were afraid we would talk too much. But then they relented, and we all had dinner together one night. And after that, it was Sophie and I were gabbing away.
Yeah, we stick notes under the table, and then
Yeah,
you know.
we couldn't be stopped. We were incorrigible, is what we were.
Yeah. I'm wondering if this is Marlo who drew the beautiful rock. I'm hoping.
Oh.
It is. Yeah.
Maybe it is. That would be nice. Was it Marlo who was from Oakland? I know that we had one shout out from Oakland. Who knows? So we have 3 more questions. Oh, it says yes. Marlo says yes. It is me. Thank you, Marlo. And I had Oakland wrong, but good to see you, Marlo. Thanks for joining. So the last 3 questions we have are very similar. So they're going to be our final question rolled up into one, but this was asked by Colleen, Jen, and Eva. And they want to know, it's a 2-part question. 1, if you have plans to write together again, and 2, what your next project is.
Well,
Annie, do you start?
we have it is absolutely certain in my mind that I cannot let Sophie go, and we're going to have to make something else. What that thing will be, we don't know, but it's going to happen, because this is, you know, it would be ridiculous for us not to work together. And besides, I want to find out what's in all the boxes on Sophie's shelf. So yeah, we will, and we're gonna make something, and I don't know what it is. And in the meantime, I have a new series about a kid named Iggy. The first book was called The Best of Iggy, and Iggy is 9 years old, and he has never met an impulse he didn't like, and so he gets in some trouble sometimes. But you know what? Iggy's great. Iggy is tons of fun. I love the guy. So I'm writing some books about Iggy, and I got a few picture books coming out, and those are my future projects. Over to you, Sophie.
I have a picture book coming out in the summer called Negative Cat, which was it's about a kid who has always wanted a cat. On day 427 of asking his parents for a cat, they finally give in, and he chooses the cat at the shelter, who, as his sister later says, is kind of negative. Stares at the wall, throws up in the vestibule, eats the flowers, deletes the email that he's just written to grandma. Anyway, it has a and I have
had the great joy of illustrating a book by Kate DiCamillo called The Beatrice Prophecy. And some of you may know Kate DiCamillo's other books because of Winnie Pixie and Edward Tulane and a whole bunch of amazing books. So I did the pictures for The Beatrice Prophecy, which also comes out in the summer. And one other thing about, so Annie lives in California and I live in New York, so we're on opposite sides of the country. And many years ago, I had this idea that in book 10, there's a mysterious yellow rope. And so I had this idea where I would draw a yellow rope in a very long scroll of paper and kids would draw themselves along the rope. And then I concertinaed it up into an accordion like this and carried it around to school visits, and it kept getting longer and longer. And the idea was that it would one day be so long it could reach from my house across the country to Annie's house. But the problem was, it is now so big, I can't carry it anywhere anymore. And it's too big. It's not, unfortunately, big enough to reach Annie, but it is too big to move anywhere. But it's been around the world. I packed it. It took most of my suitcase. It went to Australia. Kids in Australia drew themselves. Kids in Rwanda drew themselves on there. In England. So a lot of kids around the world have drawn themselves on the IVB mystery yellow rope. Maybe one day we'll take each end of it and see how far we can get.
Meet in Utah.
That's amazing. I'm going to try to turn on my video so I can say goodbye to you in person. Thank you so much, Annie and Sophie. That was lovely. Thank you to all of our attendees who are here tonight. Rachel put a bunch of links in the chat, so make sure you click and open those up before you leave to see all of Annie's other works and to see what Sophie is working on next. I saw that Rachel put a chat in there, or a link in there. Elizabeth did suggest that you write Ivy and Bean Go to College. I noticed that in the chat, so I wanted to throw that out there. But thank you so much, and yes, also thank you to Chronicle Books, who's a local publisher out here to the San Francisco Bay Area and a big friend to Books Inc. So thank you to everyone here. To our attendees, if you purchased a copy of the book via Eventbrite, it will ship out this week with special goodies. So keep an eye out for a tracking number to the email that you registered with Eventbrite. And I'll also be sending shortly, as soon as I have my tech issues figured out, a follow-up email with a special event coupon in there. So if you didn't get your copy yet, you can do so on booksinc.net through the next week and get 15% off with that coupon. So, and if you want to share, because we're all about sharing here, if you want to send a copy to a friend or a family member, we do ship nationwide and to Canada. So keep that in mind if you've already got your copy. So thank you, Sophie and Annie, and hopefully we see you in person one of these days soon. And I hope you all have a wonderful night, and thank you again, and congratulations.
Thank you for hosting us on our first event of our final tour.
Yes, thank you.
All right. For coming.
Yes, thank you, everyone. I'm going to say goodnight. Bye-bye.
Hey.